All right, the man's about to join me as a former All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler, 12-year NFL vet, a second-round pick, okay? Also a scholar/male athlete of the year by 4 different publications in the year 2000, a 2-time first-team academic All-American, 3-time All-Big 12 performer, including first-team All-Big 12 in the year 2000, 3-time Lifter of the Year finalist, won the award twice, okay? And he's also the record holder for most blocked field goals in a game, 1999 versus Texas A&M, and in a season with 3 blocked field goals. Mr. Kyle Vanden, Bosch, how you doing, my friend?
Doing well. How are you?
Dude, I'm doing good, and I want to start off by a little bit of a sigh of relief from Husker Nation today. Your thoughts on Tony White staying as Nebraska's defensive coordinator. And again, he was just in that conversation for UCLA's head coach. They've hired Deshaun Foster, which means he's staying. What are your thoughts on Tony White staying?
I think it's huge. I've had an opportunity to meet with him a couple of times. He's a great leader, a great coach, a great mentor. Obviously, I think as long as he's at Nebraska, he's going to be a part of other coaching searches just because of the quality of coach he is. He and, a couple of recent additions, but I think Coach Rule has put together a great staff. I'm excited about some of the additions they have coming, but the ability to keep Coach White, have some continuity with the defense, I think it'll be huge this upcoming season.
I'm joined on the Allo Fiber VIP line by former Nebraska defensive end, rush end, as they were called back then. All right, Kyle Vanden Bosch. Now, I'm sure you watched Nebraska last year. You watched the defensive line. They were the biggest question mark with so many young players coming into the season. All right, throughout the year, Ty Robinson, Nash Hutmaker, and the whole defensive line played so well. In your opinion, what helped them play so well in this 3-3-5 defense in their first year in the system?
I mean, the biggest thing for me is, having played D-line as you did, it's the ability to be disruptive, get in the backfield, make things happen, create some negative plays, but more than anything, today's game, the more you can be in the quarterback's face, be in his lap, be around his ankles, get hits, you affect the passing game. You can, I do some radio now for the Cardinals, and they're kind of a part of a rebuild right now. And, I'm a big believer in building a team from the inside out. You can make up for a lot of deficiencies on your defense if you have a solid, stout defensive line, but more importantly, disruptive defensive line. If you're not asking guys on the back end to have to cover for 3 or 4 seconds, which very few people on this planet can do, then, if you're wreaking havoc up front, if again you're affecting the quarterback on almost every throw, then you do have the ability to make up for deficiencies. If you have injuries or if you have guys that are kind of learning on the fly on the back end, if you can do things up front, it really gives you the ability, and it also gives you some creativity and the ability to disguise some things on the back end if you're not giving the quarterback time to be comfortable in the pocket.
Now, with so many of those defensive linemen and just overall starters on that defense coming back for next year, how good do you think the Black Shirts can be next season?
I think they can be great. Again, another year under Coach White's system. The ability to – I think the biggest challenge, it's not just for Nebraska, but for coaches in general, with so much roster turnover from year to year, is just finding out what players do best. I'm not a believer in a good coach doesn't come in with his system and say, this is what I do, this is what works. I'm going to plug you in and you're going to have to learn it. You have to be able to adapt to what players do well. Some players, use different alignments. They operate better in space. Some guys work better in a phone booth and in close quarters. And I think, that learning process sometimes can happen quickly, sometimes can take a number of years. And, with the college football landscape with transfers and guys coming and going and trying to find their right fit, you don't often have the luxury of having 2-3 years to find what they do best to develop these players. But, in Nebraska's situation with so many returning players, you can really build off of what their assets are, utilize them and what they do well, put them in the right alignment so that they can go and be most effective in the scheme.
All right, as always, ladies and gentlemen, send me your questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, or otherwise to 402-464-5685. Now, we've got a young quarterback room, 2 true freshmen, Dylan Riola, Daniel Kalen. You got Heinrich Harburg coming back, who had 5 starts a year ago. So we have a total of 5 career starts in our quarterback room right now, but a lot of talent. What are your thoughts on Dylan Riola possibly starting next year as a true freshman?
I think it's a real possibility. He's played at a high level at the high school game, has a dynamic arm, can put the ball anywhere, and has worked with some of the top quarterback trainers in the country. So he has the knowledge. He has the experience, having played at some big high schools, playing at a high level at some of the bigger high schools. So I think he does have that opportunity. It is tough with a true freshman, really knowing what you have. Again, the quarterback position, more than any, it just takes reps, and it's not just practice reps, it's live reps. So if he does have an opportunity, if he does get playing time, or if he does earn the starting job, it may take him some time to fill into form. Very few true freshman quarterbacks have it figured out their first season if they get the nod. So, I'm as intrigued as anybody. I know he's got a good head on his shoulders. Like I said, he's got good experience. I coach high school here in Arizona, and so I'm familiar with some of the things he did when he was playing here, and what he was able to do to lead some of his teams and playing under some high pressure situations. So he's got all of that, but with the level of play in the Big Ten and some of the D lines he's going to face, some of the elite athletes he's going to see on the back end and coverage, teams are going to dial it up. Teams are, if he or, really with 3 still fairly, 2 true freshmen and 1 quarterback who doesn't have a ton of experience, you're going to have to expect some of those things and account for them early. You're going to have to, build the offense around him, establish a good run game, keep the balance in the offense so that he's able, you don't put too much on his plate, especially at the beginning.
All right, we just got a message from Kim Kelly. She says, "Hi, Kyle. Your mom crocheted a beautiful blanket for my daughter when she was born in 2000. Still have it. Great to hear you on here." All right, keep sending in those questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, or otherwise, 402-464-5685. Now, you were a 3-time Lifter of the Year finalist, a 2-time 1999-2000 winner of the award, and now you are a strength coach as well. So talk to me. I know people know it's important. Strength conditioning is important, but I feel like it's the edge that Nebraska had for so long, and I feel like it's that edge that Matt Rule is trying to get in the Huskers' corner again. Just how big a deal is strength conditioning when done the right way, in your opinion?
It's huge. I know throughout my career, both in college and the pros, my best friends, the people I spent the most time with, it's not the head coach, it's not the defensive coordinator, it's not even my position coach, it's the strength coach. And when you develop those type of relationships, you have that type of trust. And, the strength coach is there with you through the hard days, through the grind. And having an opportunity to meet Corey Campbell last spring, I sat down with him, with my boys for a little bit, talked about his vision, talked about his philosophy, talked about what he's bringing to the program. And also, one of my best friends, as I said, Ted Rath, he was one of my strength coaches in Detroit. He went on to be the head strength coach for the Rams when they won the Super Bowl. He moved on. Now he's at an even bigger role, kind of overseeing all aspects of athletic performance with the Eagles. And he was, a part of the reason I believe that the Eagles were in the Super Bowl last year. It's where the foundation is established. And it's not just a matter of, getting your players bigger and stronger. Look, that's a huge piece of it. And, it's a huge piece of performance on the field. It's a huge piece of injury prevention. But the things you do in the off season, the way you grind, the way you push each other, that's where most of the team building happens. You can't just expect to show up in training camp and build that type of unity. It's the days where guys are picking each other up, pushing each other, guys are throwing up and being encouraged to try to finish their lift, finish their workouts. That's where your team is built. In those days where you grind, the days that the fans don't see, that's where your team is built. And I'm a big believer in what Corey Campbell and his staff are bringing. And now again, having another year for him to establish that trust, establish those relationships with a lot of those players in the locker room to get the type of not only equipment but just the type of system that he wants for the players. I think that's going to really show this fall for the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
All right, let's talk a little bit of NFL, a little bit of Super Bowl. What were your thoughts on the game yesterday, the Super Bowl game? And I'm just going to ask you, because it's been thrown out there, and I think most people were joking at first. Now some people are starting to actually kind of take it serious. So your thoughts on the game as a whole and the insane idea that the NFL might be rigged in some way, shape, or form?
All right, so I'll start with the second question. It's ridiculous, and you know that as well. Players are out there to win. Players have no part of that. Coaches are out there. This is their livelihood. Nobody's going to ever purposely not give their best effort, regardless of what situation your team is in, and certainly in a playoff game. So I guess I would like to put that to bed. We live in a world now where everybody you talk to has some sort of conspiracy theory about what's going on in the world. But I can tell you one thing. Professional football, it doesn't happen. It's never happened. It's only, to my knowledge, only recently been a part of the conversation. So that's absolutely not true. The game last night, phenomenal game. It was a battle. I picked the Niners to win just because of the talented roster that they have. I mean, you've got a top 3 left tackle, you've got a top 3 tight end, you've got the best running back in the game. You've got, Deebo Samuel, in my opinion, is a top 5 receiver. You got Brandon Ayuk, who's really come out. You've got the defensive line for the Niners, who's got so much talent and disruptive, and you've got a pair of linebackers that's probably better than any tandem in the league. So I just thought it was too much talent. I'll tell you, 2 things, in my opinion, won the game for the Chiefs. Brock Purdy played a good game, and I think he put a lot of the talk of game manager to rest because he did enough to win the game. But 2 things won the game for the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, the Niners kicked that field goal. They left too much time on the clock. You know that in the very least that Patrick Mahomes is going to drive and get their team down to field goal range to send it to overtime, possibly win it at the end of regulation. And then when the Niners again had to settle for a field goal in overtime, I knew at that moment it wasn't enough. So there's just certain players. Look, there was elite players and elite athletes all over that field, but Patrick Mahomes is an elite competitor. He always seems to find ways to win games when it matters the most and make the plays that teams need to make. And that's exactly what he did. It was also, in my opinion, a coaching masterpiece by Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo. Andy Reid, just his play calling, his sequencing, the scouting and evaluation he does. Early in the game, they did like a zone read, but you knew from the snap that Mahomes fully intended to keep it, knowing that Nick Bosa's aggressiveness, he was going to close down the back end. And with Dre Greenlaw out of the game, there was no linebacker to scrape over the top. Got a 22-yard gain, and then in crunch time, in overtime on 4th and 1, they ran the exact same play, had the same result, picked up 7 yards. And then to the play that won the game, the Chiefs, I think they called it corn dog motion is what he called it. But you take one of your fastest players, you send him like he's running a jet sweep, he slams on the brakes and comes back and has leverage on the defense. And they scored 2 red zone touchdowns in the Super Bowl against the Eagles last year. And when it matters most, they ran the exact same play. This time it was against a zone, but they sent 2 tight ends out to kind of run a pick a little bit. And Nicole Hardeman had leverage on the cornerback and got an easy touchdown to win the Super Bowl. And coaching masterpiece, and Steve Spagnuolo has done it well for years in the league. He essentially shut down a Ravens offense that was unstoppable all season 2 weeks ago. And then just seemed to know exactly when to dial up blitzes in this game. Heated up Brock Purdy at the exact right moments. And I think that was really the big difference in the game, is just the game planning and really the game flow and execution by that coaching staff.
I agree with you. I came on this show last week and I said the Niners are more talented. They have the better talent on their roster. I said I'm picking the Chiefs because of Mahomes, because they have the better defense, like output, maybe not overall talent, although they have a lot of freaking talent. And I said the coaches, and I said Steve Spagnuolo might be the best defensive coordinator in recent memory in the NFL. So a lot of similarities there. And for those who do not know, the offense on the 49ers has 4 first-team All-Pros, and then their 2 defensive ends are the number 2 overall pick in the draft, the number 3 overall pick in the draft, and then everything else that Kyle said. So I completely agree. Last couple of questions here. All right. You played for the Lions for 3 years. You were a team captain here at Nebraska, team captain in Detroit. As a guy who played for the Lions, represented that city, had the C on the chest, what did it mean to you to watch Dan Campbell and Detroit almost get to the Super Bowl, but have the season they have and make it to the NFC Championship game?
Yeah, look, the Dan Campbell hiring, I think a lot of people kind of rolled their eyes hearing the way he talked, the way he wanted to run his team. But he's exactly – he represents what the city of Detroit was about. It represents what I felt about the city of Detroit when I was there. Like, nobody respects us. It's a tough city full of tough people, and that's exactly who Dan Campbell is. And he has complete buy-in from his players. And, it was fun to watch what they were able to do this season. And this is a team, as I talked about, I firmly believe you build a team from the inside out. They had one of the best offensive lines in football, and they had a really good defensive line, and they leaned on them. And to see them, win in the playoffs and see what it did for that city, to see the fans staying for, what was, over an hour after the playoff wins, and, fans crying because they had waited so long. It just felt good for the city to be rewarded in that way. And it's unfortunate because, they really played a good game when they lost, and had every opportunity to win it. And it's just sometimes circumstances don't work out the way, you hope. But I think they'll be back. The team's built to sustain. It was, again, when you're built upon physicality, that carries over year to year. Sometimes a team can be gimmicky. Sometimes you can bring in a couple of superstars and really ignite a team. But, when you're a tough team, you're built upon physical play, that will last and carry over. So it's disappointing that they weren't able to get to the Super Bowl. I think that would have been just fantastic for the city of Detroit. But at the same time, I think that they'll be back.
All right, last question I got for you. I don't know if you remember this at all. I think it was going into my second year with the Rams, so it would have been 2008. Okay, we had our first preseason game was against the Titans. You were on the Titans, but we practiced against each other for like 2-3 days that week leading up to the first preseason game. And like we happened to run by each other at one point in practice, and you had like these red contacts in. I'm just going to be honest. You look like a maniac. And I mean that in a complimentary fashion. I was like, holy crap, this dude's nuts, because we've never actually met in person, even though we've interacted via text and things like that. It's like, dude, this guy's crazy. Talk to me about, and then I watch you play. The effort was out of this world. I've never seen anyone in my life play harder than Kyle freaking Vanden Bosch when I would watch opposing offenses, but the defensive unit of the Detroit Lions to be on the field, okay, because that's where you're at when I was first entered the league. Like, dude, you were all over the field with your effort and pursuit to the ball. But I've always wanted to ask you this. Talk to me about the red contacts. I'm curious about that.
Okay. Thanks for the nice words, first of all. But, so we were in training camp, and our trainers had said that they had these new contacts that Nike made. They're really made for golfers and marketed for golfers, but it was basically like wearing sunglasses in your eyes. And then, it seems like forever ago, but there was a time where training camp was actually tough when you actually had 2 days.
Yeah, I remember.
Hours out in the heat and the humidity and the sun. And so I just started wearing them in training camp. It was, you're not always squinting. Take some of the glare out. And then I started wearing for preseason games, and then, it kind of became an intimidation thing as well. And so I wore them for as long as they made them. And then even for whatever reason, Nike discontinued making the contacts. My trainer reached out to Nike and emptied out their supplies, and whatever they had left, they had sent to the team. So I had a couple years supply even after they stopped making them. But it just kind of became part of the persona, to just your point about me playing with effort. I knew what I was. I knew who I was. I was never the best athlete on the field. I was never going to overwhelm people with my strength or physicality. So I knew I had to play as hard as I could every single snap, and that would be the thing that set me apart. And then as I kind of went on in the league, it became a responsibility, and I knew that people were watching me because people said, watch this guy, watch how hard he plays. And I felt like I could never take a play off in practice. I could never take a play off in games because my teammates were watching. Other players around the league were watching. Little kids were at home were watching because their parents were telling them, watch this guy, watch him chase the ball, watch his effort down the field. And it just became, it became who I was. And then, it was never even a second thought. I couldn't take a play off. I could never trot to the ball or jog to the ball. It was just all out as long as I could, as hard as I could. And that was what I added to the team.
Well, Kyle, I certainly enjoyed watching you when I was growing up. I enjoyed actually learning from you on film as a young NFL player as well. And I want to thank you for taking the time to join me today, my friend.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure being with you. Thanks, Adam.